So I believe one of the best ways to get to, true performance out there is going to be building off of a foundation of knowing who you are. And on top of that, what you're capable of doing skill wise. So my whole thing with like confidence I define as a deep trust and understanding of who you are and your ability. So you've got the authenticity of going out there. So you're not trying to be something you're not. Like if I've defined for myself what a meaningful pitching performance on the mound is outside of outcomes, and I own that as my identity, then the mental skills piece and the mindsets are all going to work together on top of that foundation of who I am.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Clearing the Bases, the podcast where we step up to the plate and dive deep into the world of youth baseball. I'm your host, Jimmy Filangeri. On this show, we discuss all things related to the preparation and development of youth baseball players, coaches, and yes, even parents. So sit back, settle in, and get ready to hear from some of the greatest baseball minds out there.
So when it's like hit the ball hard, it's also coming from a place of simplify too, like feeling like I have to do less. Like hitting a home run with bases loaded feels like a lot. Me putting the ball in play feels a lot more doable. And it's almost like lightening the load off the kid's shoulders in the box. So expectations and pressure, higher expectations usually brings high pressure. If I'm telling myself I expect to get a hit or I need to get a hit, that's a lot of pressure. And you're telling yourself, I expect this to happen.
So tonight we have Lane Farmer. He has a website called Your Formula Now, where he talks about mental performance and mindset. He is a former high school and college baseball player and now continues working with players as a mindset, character, and mental skills coach. Lane conducts workshops, he presents to large groups, and works one-on-one with families and athletes. He believes in building relationships with his athletes that bring a lasting impact and change. Thanks for coming on, Lane. How's everything tonight?
Things are going good. I appreciate you having me, Coach, and I'm excited to talk and dive into everything you just talked about and what I'm doing with athletes from a mindset, character, and mental skill standpoint. So thanks so much for having me.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I was really happy you reached out. We had a nice conversation on the phone, and I'm looking forward to another great conversation. So let's start out with, now I know you have a story. Everybody has a story. Tell us your story. Like, take us through, say, your high school playing days through your college days.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll give you the broad thing because there's so much in there. But essentially, I remember it kind of all started even just, before high school, just trying different sports, not really feeling like a naturally gifted athlete by any means, going out there or being the fastest kid or whatever. Always had a fearful mindset towards going out there to try to even compete and keep up with everyone. I was always afraid of things, afraid of messing up. And going into high school, I didn't really have a sport that I felt I connected with or was really excelling at, but baseball was something that I was going out for, to try out for. Went to a small private Christian school, and freshman year, I remember going out and trying out for the, varsity or JV. We had a combined joint thing, and the varsity coach came up to me actually day one and said, I was going out for third base at the time, and he kind of shared that I was not going to have an opportunity to play third base for varsity without even doing much that day. So I'm like, this guy kind of shut me down without even me, making some throws to first yet. The JV coach actually came up to me, and I was a stocky kid, and asked if I've ever caught before. And I said, no, I have no idea. I've never been behind the plate. I've never put gear on. I don't own gear. I don't own a catcher's mitt or nothing. He's like, well, do you want to give it a try? And I was like, well, if that's an opportunity to put me on the field, on the JV team, like, sure, I'll go back there. So borrowed some gear, went behind the plate, and discovered I had a nice little cannon attached to my arm and, threw somebody out. And from there, I got really curious and interested. And I was like, that felt good to have an attribute that I've discovered. And then I started to block. I liked blocking. I liked doing that. Nobody else wanted to do the nitty gritty work. So I fell in love with catching. I took the opportunity. I rolled with it, and I stuck with that through high school. The switch for me really flipped about junior year in high school when I had a couple friends transferred to the school. I became friends with them, and they were talking about college, and I was I was like, well, what is that? Well, you can play in college. And, I didn't start asking questions. They invited me to come to this little indoor place, started working out with them, doing extra hitting lesson or hitting on my own, and took some lessons for catching. And that's where I started to get curious, is when some friends started talking about playing at the next level. And in my head, I wonder if I could. I was doing pretty good with catching. I started going to some camps, started getting some good measurables for my defense, and my defense is what got me into the next level. And from there, did pretty well enough in high school. And then when I started to get recruited, I was getting recruited just by a couple schools. There was a D2 school I was getting recruited by. I thought 4-year was the decision. And this is where my story starts to get a little crazy, a little challenging. I wanted to play Major League Baseball like any other young kid coming out of high school, right? Or if you really have that desire to give it a try. And my first school I went to was a complete disaster. I went to, this is a message for parents and everybody out there. When you're searching for schools, you really got to know what you're walking into and try to really do your research to find an institution that you value, the coach values what you value, and the culture and the environment. It's very hard, but it takes time and it takes effort to do that. And I really recommend looking into the type of experience you want and not just the number or level of division or anything like that. But the first school was a complete mess. Guys were not focused on baseball. Guys getting in trouble. We were running every Monday. It felt like I was in the military, and I was wondering to myself if this is the next level, or if this is everywhere, or if this is just what I got to do. And luckily I followed my instinct to try and leave and transfer. And that was an ugly process. And I only stayed at the school for one semester. So I went there, left after my freshman year in the fall, transferred to a junior college back near my house. So now I provided myself with moving into a new team in the spring. And that was a challenging effort to try and get playing time right away. Now I'm at a school where there's 2-year turnover. So I struggled to get playing time my sophomore year. But I had a determining factor to come home, hit the weights hard, really transform myself, come back. I'm like, I want this starting position my second year, and come back. And again, battling a little bit, got a little bit of playing time, enough to provide me 1 or 2 schools that were looking at me. Ended up taking actually a gap semester where I was going to go to a school after my 2-year school. And I backed out because things weren't lining up with school and academics and things. It was very expensive and just wasn't making sense. So I backed out too late to sign up for classes. So I actually had a semester where I didn't even take classes. And this is where I started to question if I'm gonna continue playing baseball anymore. So I had 2 athletic years left. And then from there, took that one semester. I started to go look at schools for just school. I was pretty close to giving up. And there was a moment where I remember just holding a baseball in my hand, going to a family event during this time off. And I was just kind of piddling with it in the car. And I started to think about everything that I was doing and what I went through to just get into some of these situations. And I was looking at the opportunities that I had, and I was like, I don't think I've really seen myself like get enough playing time to see what I can do out on the field at the next level. So the first 2 years was a lot of that. And then my why shifted from I want to get drafted and do all this to just like, I want to finish what I started. And I just want to see, all the time my mom and my family has put towards me and the opportunities I've been provided. I'm not dead. I got my body to still use. So I wanted to see what I could do. And my new why was to put everything I could in the next 2 years to, if I'm done in the next 2 years, I'm not going to be done without seeing some sort of thing on the field, accomplishing something and at least having the chance for my ability to participate. So I actually called a school back that I told respectively no originally. And at this point, the coach, my coach, Coach Guy Robinson, shout out to him, because I've never really asked him, but because I was coming back to him, it became more of like, yeah, we still have a spot for you, but like, come on, we'll see what you got, but you're going to have to like prove yourself a little bit, So I took that mentality, I took that opportunity and went in there and did everything that I could. Junior year, got a little bit of playing time. There's a senior catcher there, but senior year was my time to shine. And I walked into that role very proud to have the opportunity and do everything that I could. And our coach did a great job of going out and getting some senior 1-year transfers for pitching. And we had a fantastic team and we had a World Series run. We took the school to their first D3 World Series. in school history. We finished ranked second in the country. We had a lot of guys make All-American teams and all-region teams. And I was just proud to be a part of that. So my story is very much of a struggle bus for so long of, questioning my ability, having my own mental struggles and battles, but my pursuit, which is why I'm so big about protecting a pursuit for the athlete, is you want to be able to have support while you're going through these kinds of things. There's a lot of demands going on for an athlete as they go through a journey outside of what everyone thinks that we're doing just to get the stats or just achieve something. Like, everyone's journey could be like a living hell, or it could be smooth. And you've got some people that are like, my process was great. I went to one school, a big D1 school, 4 years, played all 4 years. Mine was very much not that. But looking back, having that senior year was definitely a memorable situation. And I'm glad I went through the process I did, because I feel like I've lived a lot of the pain of not physical pain as well. My shoulder's not too good, but the pain of the mental side of like going through a struggling career as an athlete, just to try and enjoy some piece of it. I'm thankful for that, because now I can feel when I'm working with athletes, when they're talking about stuff or they're struggling and they're handling adversity, I'm able to know for the most part what they're going through. And it's a very hard process sometimes, and it's not perfect for everyone. And I would say for the majority of athletes, they're not getting a smooth process in terms of things are just going the way they want to all the time, and they're making all conference teams and everything like that. So that's a long-winded answer, but that's definitely the as short as I could make it, Coach. I apologize for that.
No, not a problem. That's why I wanted you to tell the story, because I knew what the story was, obviously, beforehand, and I thought that there was a lot there that we can use to make people understand. Number one, and I'd like to go here first, is that you are, that story cannot explain the grind any better. Okay. You went through a lot of things that you had to jump a lot of hurdles, let's put it that way, to get where you finally got. And then your senior year, you went on to have, a great season, something very memorable. Okay. You never gave up. You kept fighting. You did what you had to do to get there. So we talk about it all the time about adversity. How did you deal with the adversity, and how did that adversity that you went through, how does it help you with your players now that you're training?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would say at the time, the adversity piece, it has to make sense to somebody of why you're going to do hard things or go through hard stuff. Because some people should walk away if it's not a healthy environment. If you've got a B rating, that's why I left my first school. It was awful. It was really bad. And, when you have adversity hit you, to move through it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of faith, and it has to make sense why I would continue going and trying to look at what I mentioned in my story was like my why shifted. So I think when you have big adversity moments come up, you have to look at, it takes a lot of practice. This is a huge mental skill to be optimistic, but to find the good out of what's coming from what's happening to you, and see how you can use that for new fuel to move you towards what you want. So it was a mixture of like revisiting, why am I playing baseball? If I were to continue doing this, what's the new why I'm going to go do this? Because if it's not strong enough when adversity hits, it's definitely going to knock you down to where you don't want to feel, when you don't want to get back up anymore. So there's got to be a little bit of hope mixed in there. So for me doing that, it definitely took a lot of time sitting there thinking about it and shifting why I wanted to do something. And now what I'm able to do with it is apply it to different aspects of what I'm doing in my own life as well, like career wise and things like that. Like if I want to go do something new or do something big, I'm able to understand how to look at it as a challenge and look at it as ways to grow me and build me, right? On top of being able to sit there with the athletes and help them frame how to look at adversity as good stuff and look at the rewards that's coming. It's building you and growing you. So yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword sometimes with, it's not going to feel great. It's going to be understanding what's coming, but it definitely has to make sense for someone to continue on taking gut punches. And especially in the game of baseball, we always hear the 3 out of 10 is great. most of the time you're getting punched in the gut. So if you do not learn how to look at getting punched in the gut as a positive thing, it's going to be a long, fragile career for you. So that resilience is going to come from adversity. You understanding adversity is going to show up. And at the end of the day, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I need to make a choice on how I'm going to move through this thing. And if you understand it and it makes sense, it's still going to be hard. This is the tough thing. It's going to be hard either way for two athletes that are the same, moving through the same journey. If that was possible, the same makeup, same ability, same genetics, both could be going through the same process, and one's different than the other. And because they're seeing it differently, and both are going to be hard, right? Like working on your skills is hard. Adversity for my life, for my career was hard. But it's going to be able to switch things up for you when you actually are able to dissect it differently and apply things differently. So adversity is going to hit you. It's going to be hard, but if you can understand it's going to be hard regardless, but when it makes sense, it's like taking steps into the choice of hard versus something that's hitting you and you feel like I can't do anything about it, if that makes sense. Yeah. So if it makes sense and connects, it's purposeful hard. I'd say it's purposeful hard and not just random go outside and run for no reason hard.
Right. So let's say you have a kid that is training and he's struggling on the mound. He's lost the strike zone. He's all over the place. He feels like he can't get back on track. How do you help him?
Yeah. So kind of like breaking it down from a standpoint of like what I do with an athlete, is that kind of like what you want me to answer? Kind of like, how do I kind of map out that process? Or are you saying in the moment, if a kid's struggling on the mound, like what would I say?
Right. Not in the moment. I mean, on the whole. So in other words, kid comes to you and says, hey coach, I'm struggling. I can't find the strike zone. I don't know. Maybe I'm not meant for this, that type of thing. So how do you build him back up and get him back on track?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a lot of things you can get into, but the parts that I start with on the mindset, character, and mental skill piece is character at the center. So I believe one of the best ways to get to, true performance out there is going to be building off of a foundation of knowing who you are. And on top of that, what you're capable of doing skill wise. So my whole thing with like confidence I define as a deep trust and understanding of who you are and your ability. So you've got the authenticity of going out there. So you're not trying to be something you're not. Like if I've defined for myself what a meaningful pitching performance on the mound is outside of outcomes, and I own that as my identity, then the mental skills piece and the mindsets are all going to work together on top of that foundation of who I am. So when I go out there, I can stay within myself instead of trying to impress other people, what looks like, stats and what the people are going to think of me. When you're unsure of the security system within, then all of these things outside are going to have a lot more control over you in the moment. So for a kid to go out there and if he's struggling on the mound and he's like, what's going on? The first thing I do is I'm going to sit down and figure out, and kind of like any progression, whether you're a strength coach or something else, you want to get a baseline for kind of where they're at with what they're thinking and why they're experiencing what emotions are showing up. Is there a specific situation? Is it bases loaded, you get tense, or is it anytime you're in a 3-2 count, you get nervous? So you can identify where the kid's at with what is the actual situation that's presenting itself and what type of emotions and body tension or what's happening to him on the mound physically and mentally. Once you kind of get a baseline for that, and I've got an idea of like, okay, I hear a lot of language about him talking about he's worried about what people are going to think. If he's talking about like, I'm worried about my coach moving, taking me out of the starting rotation if I walk more than 5 guys. So that tells me a baseline of like caring what people think about them is one of his main distractions. Then it's kind of giving him something kind of immediately there to like work on that's very simple, like an in your control, out of your control situation. And you mentioned like the tracks, falling off the tracks. I call them mental tracks. Like when we do these things really well, when you focus on these things, you have a better chance to stay on track with what's going to give you a best chance to see whatever you want to see happen. When you fall off, it's all about recognizing you fell off and try to get back on your tracks, which is a big misconception. I think a lot about parents when it comes to helping their kids or coaches helping their kids, they're trying to build the tracks like you're never going to fall off, but it's more about knowing when you do and how quickly can you get back on the tracks. The realignment is actually the biggest mental skill. So I'll start there. I'll figure out what's their main distraction, where are they at, why do they feel that way? Is that true or not? Is that actually true? Is coach really going to move you if you walk a couple guys? Or, have you ever talked to your coach about that? Or is that something you're creating a nightmare in your own mind? Now, when I help him identify that, what's in your control, out of your control, what I then move into is for any position, whether it's a pitcher or anything, objectively, whoever's playing that role, what is the job role there? And they'll be like, well, to strike guys out. I'll be like, hey, great. That's everybody, right? Everyone's trying to strike guys out, get grounders, rollouts, an infielder's trying to field the ground ball. We start with that. And then we objectively start listing out the skills and things that go into that position and that role. So what do you need to do to strike guys out? I got to throw the ball. I got to try to be accurate, whatever it is. I help them identify the job role and job description. Again, anybody's got to fill those job descriptions, playing those positions. I got to have a backhand. I got to have a forehand. It's identifying the strengths and weaknesses of the skills required to play the position. From there, helping him pick out which ones he's really great at and building his athletic profile on the mound around doing a good job within those things. And then the mental tracks is creating objectives that he's trying to do within his control that he can execute every single time to the best of his ability that will give him a chance to get a strikeout. So creating feels for, all right, when I pound the outside corner, most of the time I strike guys out. When I throw, 30% curveballs and 70% or, 20% changes and whatever, then I get guys out most of the time. So it's helping him realize, what are you doing that creates consistency? And then those things in your control is where you set your performance objectives and you execute those most of the time. And you'll have a good chance to see your percentage of whatever success and outcomes go up because you recognize my profile on the mound. I'm not a 95 guy. I'm a spot up guy. And I do that really, really well. I'm already starting to feel more confident because I'm recognizing my unique ability and how it fits the mound. And you don't try to do more than what you're capable of doing. I see a lot of guys struggling because they're trying to throw 95 when they really should be trying to throw 88 consistently and be more controlled. Now you're walking guys more because you think throwing hard is the key to success. Now you're outside of yourself. You're trying to do too much. So I know that's a long answer, but it's basically what's the main distraction of a kid struggling? Why is he struggling there? How's it showing up? What situations? Building that base of foundation to understand where he's at. And then it's like starting with the identity aspect of like, well, what do you want to represent on the mound, man? What's the mound mean to you? Identify what's a meaningful performance on the mound to you. I'm not talking about to everybody else because everyone's going to say striking guys out and doing that stuff, which there's a lot to success that's outside your control too, buddy. When you strike somebody out, he took a pitch. So it wasn't all you that was responsible for the strikeout. He sat there and let a fastball go by that went your way this time. I call that the responsibility factor. What are you responsible for in your successes and what are you responsible for in your failures? Because both of them have parts that are going towards it that have nothing to do with the player. Yeah. It's creating that profile and then building mental tracks for him to come back to so that in times where he starts to struggle and he creates awareness towards, I'm starting to think about what are people thinking about me? That's his cue to come back to, my best chance is coming up. My next play is coming up when I do these three things, every pitch or every delivery or whatever. That gives me a good chance to see what I want. Okay, let me go back to that. Let me calm down here. Let me breathe. Let me go through my routine, my reset routine. Okay, what's the situation again? So it's all about getting them back to a state that's more logical and less emotional, and trying to kind of dissect it there if that all is coming together for you, Coach.
Yeah, no. I understand it completely, but I love what you said about, a guy trying to throw the ball 95 miles an hour and he can't throw a strike and he doesn't understand to try and dial it back a little bit. It's not about how hard you throw. It's about how many guys can you get out. And getting guys out is not necessarily striking them out. Weak ground balls, pop-ups, all of that I love. As a matter of fact, I like that better than strikeouts, less pitches usually. Yeah. But anyway, so there's a lot to it. And I love that. When you've fallen off the rails, let's do what we have to do mentally to get you back on. Because, a lot of time, most of the time, I would say probably 99% of the time, it is something mental rather than something physical. Because those mental things will throw off your mechanical stuff very easily.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the physical ability, especially if you've got a kid that is working really hard, he's putting in the reps, he's putting in the effort, he's in the weight room. If he's doing all these things and he's crushing it at practice, and it's like, why is this not transferring over to the field? He's hesitating out there. I'm noticing, he's pulling back. He's not playing loose and free like he does. Then that's where I'm like, well, 100%, what's this kid thinking about? Where is his focus? What's he paying attention to? My one kid in the field, the ball is getting ready to be hit, and right before he's taking his pregame or his steps to the play or whatever, he has these quick things pop into his head. I hope it doesn't get hit to me, because he doesn't want to make them error. But the reason why he doesn't want to make the error is because he doesn't want to let his team down. And the crazy thing about this is the way the brain works, scientifically, it's obviously always creating these folders in your mind, whether you've gone through an experience or you're thinking about something that might happen. It's very protective of you. So one of the things that I'll dive into is trying to figure out what does a kid care about most, because what you care about most, your brain's going to be very protective of it. So if you care a lot about not letting your team down, that's at the top of your list, and you link making plays for yourself when the ball comes to me to potentially letting your team down, your brain's going to immediately go, okay, we don't want that to happen. Here's a bunch of nervousness to help him not go to that situation, right? If I send him nerves and he feels scared, he might shut down, which will keep us from even having a chance to make the play if he hesitates, and your brain thinks that's a good thing, right? So there's this whole process too with kids trying to not identify with what their brain's doing in a way to protect them sometimes. So I have to help them wire to care about it, but not care about it so much to the point where you're walking on eggshells out there. And try to get them to understand you should care more about delivering your talent, because you're going to help your team. If you actually go make that play, you're helping your team. So there's that whole process too, which is on the mindsets kind of aspect of, where's a kid think about a certain situation? What's he think about his own skills and abilities? But those general topics of failure, success, letting my team down, and I try to help them wire their value system of what's most important, so that their brain can kind of get on board and on the same page with what it's doing to either keep them from harm or whatever.
So that brings me to, because a lot of the stuff that you just talked about brings me to think about confidence. So a lot of that stuff is, how can we make players confident? So what do you talk to them about to try and build up their confidence?
Yeah. So I'm sure there's a lot of mental performance coaches that can take the confidence word in a lot of different directions. Bouncing back to what I said about it, I build confidence from a place of 100% putting in the time and effort, for sure. The preparation aspect of being confident is huge. If you're not working on your skills, if you're not improving them or putting time, the sweat equity, the investment, I call it downloading your skills into your system. The only thing I could really help you with is trying whatever you do have in the moment, you being good with that and taking it into your game. But confidence is going to be able to be trusting what you have, and I can go up against this thing in front of me, whatever the challenge is, the way that you see what you have in your skills, to believe in that, not needing to see the outcome, but just believing I can handle what's in front of me. Justin Sua is a mental performance coach, and I saw a post with him the other day about a bird was sitting on a branch, and it's about the bird trusting that it knows how to fly, not the branch holding him up, right? So we put a lot of confidence in stuff that is not where it should be coming from. Your ability and your skills to handle the situation in front of you is one of the biggest pieces. So I talk a lot about process and what are we doing during the week to improve ourselves. Are we picking, like I mentioned about the pitcher, what is your strengths and weaknesses, and what do you want to see yourself improve, and kind of meet with, I'm constantly seeing myself progress on stuff. If you're an athlete and you're watching yourself get stronger in the weight room, if you're watching your location get, more dialed in, every time I go back out on the mound, I'm going to be I know I've got this thing. I spent, the hours and hours the last 5-6 months working on my fastball in the outside corner. I've got that feel dialed in. The belief has been built. So confidence, I use the words built, because you got to be someone that's putting in that time and really maximizing on the time when no one's watching. So confidence is basically being able to go out and be secure with yourself, having a relationship with you and being good with whether this goes the way I not to, I'm going to be cool with me when I walk off the field today. And I'm cool with myself when I go into the performance. Again, not really needing anyone's approval or anything. They can take it or leave it. I'm going to do my authentic job out here, the best of my ability. And I'm going to conduct myself in a way that I believe I want to. Be a good teammate and do all that good stuff. But when it comes to building the skill and ability, and then the second part of confidence is how to apply that specifically to you in your position. How do you play? You might have a scrappy second baseman that has to play differently than a 6'2" second baseman. You know, how he plays the field in relationship to how he's built. So that's the other part is like, you've got the skill and ability. Now, it's almost like for an at bat, like what's your approach? And being confident in like having a game plan when you're in the performance arena for what you're going to do when you mess something up, how you're going to respond to that, but also being flexible in the moment, but knowing your approach specifically for me and how I'm built. I was a big stocky catcher. I had an arm, I had a pretty good pop time, but I wasn't like, you know, versus another catcher that's maybe smaller, doesn't have a strong arm, but he's got fast hands to get rid of the ball. So it's knowing you and your ability and then how to apply it to your position to maximize on having good outcomes and stuff. So those are the places I start. Like, what are we improving on? Are we doing that? Are we putting the time in when no one's watching, so that when you're making mistakes, if we think about confidence in your relationship with yourself, how you treat yourself, how do you talk to yourself, how you think and act, we want to be consistent with that. And the best time to learn that, to pick yourself back up, is when you're outside on the tee, no one's watching and you're getting frustrated. Are you going to treat yourself with respect then? Because if you do it when no one's telling you or no one's watching, it's authentic. I'm picking myself back up today with no one telling me to do it. I'm giving myself grace. Then when the pressure hits in there, you had your back the whole time. I think that's a really important piece of confidence, is like, do you have your own support when you're out there? Because it's going to feel like sometimes a teammate, maybe your best friend, says something to you and it sparks, hits a chord, or your coach isn't human, says something to you. You got to have your own support mixed with the right environment. That's awesome, right? But at the end of the day, if you're working on improving something, how to apply it specifically, having a game plan for what you're going to do. And then the last thing I would say that I try to make sure all my athletes understand is, this is something I heard from a bunch of mental performance coaches. This is not something that I created, but confidence is a state of mind, not a feeling. So it's something you put yourself into. Again, it's built with a lot of hard work, and you create the security system in your mind with, who I am and who I want to be when I go out there. And you define a lot of that for yourself. And then it's just kind of like being flexible as you go out there and things don't go the way you want to as well. So an ongoing process, but it's a state of mind. So I think a lot of kids are like, I feel confident. I want to feel confident. I want to feel great today. Most of the time you aren't. Nothing's perfect. Your body hurts sometimes and stuff doesn't. I've had warm-ups go perfect and had the worst game of my life. And then I've had, terrible warm-ups and I've hit 3 home runs in a game. And right. It's just like, there's too much out of your control. So it's really just being secure with yourself, putting the time to get better at something so you can eliminate self-doubt in the moment by looking back and being like, nope, I did all of these things. I put the time in. I don't know what's going to happen here, but I've got a game plan for what works most of the time. I'm going to follow that. And then let's deliver. Let's go out there and deliver.
Yeah, I think one of the words that you used the word belief. And that's the way I kind of explain that, where I'll tell my players, I believe in you. I know you can do this. I believe in you, but you have to believe in yourself. Okay. Mm-hmm. I can believe in you all I want. If you don't believe in yourself, it's not going to happen. And the only way that's going to happen, that belief, or that, believing in yourself, is going to come by you putting in the work, and that will build your confidence. It's kind of taking what you just said and kind of putting it into a smaller box. But yeah, that was great. I mean, look, you cannot play this game if you're not confident. If you go out on the field and you said it, oh, don't hit the ball to me, I'm afraid I'm going to make an error. Well, believe me, if they hit the ball to you, you're going to make an error. You had mentioned a little bit about self-talk. Now, the way it was explained to me with self-talk is that we all do it. It happens naturally, okay? So why not take control of it and make that self-talk good? Make it positive instead of negative. Very simple. Sure.
Absolutely.
Instead of saying, geez, I hope they don't hit the ball to me. Well, how about having the attitude, I want the ball. Okay, give me the ball, right? Now there's that confidence and that self-talk that's helping you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and to your point, like 100% in mindsets, I got this definition from Dr. Amber Selking. She's a big mental performance coach, and she started it. She's done a lot of stuff, but I know she's done a lot of work at Notre Dame and LSU now with Coach Brian Kelly and stuff like that. But she defines mindsets as a set pattern of thinking that is repeated over and over again that creates that pattern, and that affects how you show up in situations and circumstances. So the self-talk of, practice is pointless, practice is pointless, I think this is a waste of time, is going to turn into the type of attitudes and behaviors that you'll see by a kid not putting out. They think it's a waste of time. They're not going to be hustling at practice. They're not going to go for it. And getting them to change it. I think the tough part is like athletes will do it a little bit, the self-talk, they don't see something like shift with their emotions or something right away. And then they're like, this ain't working. So it's explaining this in the expectation too of like mental reps is like physical reps. Like you ain't getting your swing the way you wanted to after one day of 20 reps. The self-talk component is like also trying to not come from like a fake self-talk. Like I never think it's a great idea to start saying to myself, I'm going to hit a home run. I'm like, it's futuristic,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. So I don't want to try and like say stuff to myself that I'm not going to even believe. So finding what you're saying, like for them to believe in themselves, what do they do well? And then starting their self-talk based around that kind of stuff. Like if a kid really does believe that he's got quick hands at turning two, it's like start with something like that. So something that they actually like are convicted on, they'll feel good about that. And then slowly getting them into the other areas to build the conviction that you can see in them as a coach. Like, I know this kid's fast. I know this kid can hit. He's got power, but he doesn't believe it, like you said. So it's like, you got to, for them to buy in, it's like setting the tone with like, it's going to take some time, but if you change your self-talk, you're going to train your focus too, because you'll be able to tell yourself what to pay attention to when you realize you're off the tracks in the middle of the game or whatever. So it is a challenging thing to get a kid to just start saying stuff. Some kids are like, this is funky. Like some of the kids that I'll work with for the first time, I'll be like, you need to start like talking to yourself this way. And I might say something funny and be like, you need to start saying this. And they'll laugh a little bit, but I'll be like, you think I'm joking, but you've been saying the opposite to yourself willingly.
Yeah.
You've been saying I suck.
Yeah.
Purpose.
Yeah.
So why don't we say something else on purpose, to your point, right? Like make it good, make it optimistic. What do I'll tell athletes, what do you got to lose by trying my way? Or trying a healthier way? You've been doing the hopeless route forever, man. Let's look at the track record. You don't go after the ball.
Yeah.
So why don't we try this one? What if you do start going after the ball more?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like playing that with them a little bit and just being like, well, what have you been doing and how's that been working out for you?
Yeah.
And why don't you try this one? And I think it'll work, at least like feel a little bit better for you, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. I, not that long ago, maybe a year or two ago, I had a player that was struggling. So his dad called me up and he said, could you do me a favor and talk to him? So I said, yeah, not a problem. Matter of fact, I got him on a Zoom call and I said to him, I said, okay, what's going on? So he told me, Coach, I'm not hitting well, this and that. So I said, okay, I'm going to tell you something. I said, when you step into that batter's box, I said, I know what you're thinking. So I said, really? He said, what am I thinking? I said, you're saying, I hope I get a hit. And he looked at me and he went, how did you know that? Like that. I said, because that's what a lot of kids that don't have confidence when they get in the batter's box, that's what they're thinking. I hope I get a hit. And I said to him, no. I said, when we get in the batter's boxes, all we're going to say is, I'm going to hit this thing hard. Done. That's it. That's all you need to do. And I got this from Steve Springer, is I said to him, I said, I want you to go into your next game tomorrow. And what I want you to do is I want you to line out. He was a lefty. I said, I want you to line out to the second baseman 4 times tomorrow. That's what I want you to do. Get in the batter's box. I'm going to hit it hard. I'm going to line out to the second baseman 4 times. And it was just a matter of just changing what he was thinking when he stepped into that batter's box. Because I knew the kid could hit. If he couldn't hit, I would have told his dad, hey, listen, the problem is he can't hit.
Yeah. No, to your point and to Coach Steve Springer's point, I mean, it's 100% true. A kid in the batter's box that's very outcome focused, you're thinking about getting a hit that's out of your control. Your brain's like, we don't know if we can't control everything in that situation. So it's going to freak out a little bit. So when you go to a place of like barrel the ball up, this is what I was talking about. Like, what's the role actually? What leads to getting a hit? Good timing, seeing the pitch, swinging at a pitch in the strike zone. And you start listing all the stuff that's in your control. And then all of a sudden I start to technically feel more confident because I have power over that stuff. So when it's like hit the ball hard, it's also coming from a place of simplify too, like feeling like I have to do less. Like hitting a home run with bases loaded feels like a lot. Me putting the ball in play feels a lot more doable. And it's almost like lightening the load off the kid's shoulders in the box. So expectations and pressure, higher expectations usually brings high pressure. If I'm telling myself I expect to get a hit or I need to get a hit, that's a lot of pressure. And you're telling yourself, I expect this to happen, and you expect something out of your control to happen. That's not a really good recipe for staying in control of yourself. So a lot of thoughts creep in. What if this doesn't happen? So any player out there, man, I would say keep it as simple as possible, and what's in your control and what leads to you getting good hits, and focus on doing that one or two things in the box that works for you. When it comes to, I'm just trying to do this. One of the things that the phrasing I'll say is just do this. And if I could just do this one thing, I'll have a great chance. Don't try to be perfect. Try to be pretty good in the box. Try to be pretty good. Simplify. Don't do a lot.
Control what you can control.
Absolutely. Like, what is in my control? That's the most simplest thing I can do and execute every single at bat. And if I do that most of the time, I have a higher chance at getting a hit. For me, it was like most players hunt the straight thing early on in the count. I know if I get 3 pitches every single at bat, one of them's usually a fastball. I'll be ready for that one. And even if you follow that the rest of your career, you're going to get a fastball, at some point. And if you're ready for that one, you know what I mean? So if I'm going up to the box and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I don't know if this is going to happen. I don't know if I'm good enough. You're not even thinking about what pitch you're looking for. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm like always starting with, what are the things that actually deserve our time and attention? What actually leads to me having a good chance for a hit? Pick one and just start there. Exactly. And just see what happens with you. And then if stuff starts to happen because you're like, wow, actually thinking about getting my foot down on time was helpful. You know what I mean? I'm like, great. Now we've identified the other thing was not. I don't care if it's a squirrel out in left field or what flavor ice cream you want, or somebody, you're worried about what someone thinks about you and your performance. None of those things have anything to do with you seeing this pitch and putting the barrel on the ball. Yeah. It might even be simple for a kid that's hesitating, coach. They're not even swinging the back. You see a kid freezing a lot. I'll be like, dude, step one, we just need to swing. Go up to the box, swing at the first 3 pitches. If you strike out, you've succeeded. Yeah. So to Coach Springer's point, it's like when he told the kid to hit it at the second baseman, he changed the objective of success to what normally is a failure, right? And when you order that properly for a kid, it changes them being afraid of whatever they were originally for messing up. You've got 9 guys standing in the field. Nobody wants to hit it at one. Yeah. What's the worst thing that's going to happen when you do? Yeah. You have to go back to the dugout. That's not the worst thing on the planet. You know what I mean? So if an athlete can be okay with their biggest fear out there too, I would say that's a huge piece. And I don't want to say I did this with a kid and then I'll throw it back at you, coach. Sorry, I'm going on a rant.
No, that's okay.
I did this with a kid. A dad looked at me kind of crazy. I told the kid to go to the cage. He gets on himself so much every time he messes up in the cage, and I told him to go hit a couple as soon as you put a ball after you get warmed up, put on the tee and hit a couple ground balls on purpose. And the dad was like, well, that's going to create bad mechanics. I'm like, look, 5 swings is not going to determine his Aaron Judge swing coming up, you know what I mean? Or whatever. So I just was like, go hit a couple. And the kid texted me later that day and was like, that actually felt kind of nice to, like mess up. And like, I was telling myself to mess up, but it was the objective. So I really wasn't. I was actually kind of doing what I said I was trying to do. I'm like, cool, man. So we've learned you got to be careful with what you set as your objectives, and what you're saying is failing and succeeding. I can hit 3 ground balls up the middle and it's a hit. I can hit 3 ground balls 10 feet to the left. It's an out. So defining success, hitting hard balls in the field. I love what you said there. Hit the ball hard. If I barely got under it, but I hit it on the sweet spot, I'd be like, yeah, that's frustrating, but I was on it and this guy's in trouble, right? I'm coming back. This dude doesn't, if he throws me another one of those, it is going far, right? So I really appreciate you saying that, because it's a big part of the conversations when I'm working with athletes is like, you're so afraid to fail. Go do it. Go try to hit. One kid if he tried to hit it at the second baseman and he ended up hitting it over him, he's like, you could almost say I messed up. You know what I mean? Like, right, isn't that weird?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's why I love it. It is all about the perspective and how you choose to see things. And when you help a kid align that properly and they own it, it really will open up the door to performance freedom for an athlete, to not be so concerned with the wrong things.
I guess what it goes back to is like what we were talking about in the batter's box is having an approach, knowing what you're trying to do. And if you know that, then maybe it'll keep you present and it'll get all of those bad thoughts out of your head.
100%. So a lot to what you're saying. And just to be clear, I'm not always trying to get kids to hit ground balls. I think, right.
I didn't think you were.
I get what you're saying. And I think from the baseball side of me, like the instructor side, I don't like when people get locked into the launch angle and all that stuff anyway. Coming back to like, how are you built and what's your style and how do you play? If I've got a kid that's trying to be something, if I've got a 5'4" kid that's got speed and a contact guy trying to be Aaron Judge, he's training the wrong way too. He's going to be trying to swing like that in the cage and you're not maximizing on how you're built. Slap the ball and play, beat it out, do that kind of thing. If I could tell, if for these parents that are so hung up on stats, if I was like, would you rather have your kid hit 500 with 20 stolen bases in a season or 250 with 1 home run? What would you say? And they'd always be like 500. I'm like, well, what if most of those are ground ball hits through the infield? No one's asking what kind of single it was on the stat sheet, That's right. So those are, to your point, and also with the approach so that you can stay within yourself. If you have the right approach, and again, if it's built on your identity and who you are and your ability, if those things match up and that kid has put time into working on that and crafting his approach and the way he's thinking is paired with that, like for a guy that's a slap fast guy, his mentality and his mindset of his self-talk is like, I'm a speedy dude and I'm going to get on base. And the way he talks to himself is built on how his approach is. So it's authentic, right? I'm not telling him to talk like Aaron Judge and say, I'm going to put this out of the park. That doesn't match up with how he is in his approach. So that's why I sit down with what's your athletic style and approach on the field and who you're trying to be and what's your meaningful stuff. And then we're going to bridge the self-talk and mental skills are going to put those two together to create a confident athlete out there following their game plan. How they talk to himself matches that game plan. It's like this nice little like windmill of stuff going on inside of him where he now believes in himself because he's being who he is and he's being who he is as an athlete. And following that game plan, again, like guy on third base, no outs, a fly ball works. That's why it's like, what is your objective? What are you trying to do? Is it getting the job done? Is it being a team player, like bigger picture mentality? I'm trying to do this for the team, or is it very, I want to get a hit and this and that? And it all works together, but 100%, like no one said a ground, like if I took a kid out that has not talked to, and I think this is the best way to think about it. If I take an athlete that has not talked to any type of coach about what's failing and succeeding, a child's mentality is a great way to look at it. If I take a kid into the cage for the first time at 8 years old, never swung a bat before, and I put a ball on the tee, and he takes a swing and hits the tee, knocks the ball over, and the ball falls 2 inches from the tee, and looks up at me and laughs and just had a good time. He doesn't know the difference between what just happened. Besides, he just had fun swinging that damn bat, right? Yeah. Until someone comes up to him and goes, when you hit a ball to the ground, that is not good. Now you have just wired in his brain now goes, failing, bad when I hit a ground ball, stay away from that. So now every time he hits a ground ball, his brain triggers frustration and anger, and he's wiring that process in his head to avoid hitting grounders versus I'm trying to hit a line drive and a grounder happened this time. Right.
I was a little bit out front. I hit it on the ground.
Exactly. So I'm like, especially at the young ages, these coaches, what you yell at and what you draw attention to and what you say is good or not good, that is 100% very important in the developmental mental piece. Like I can't say it enough. Like these kids are sponges, and the self-talk that we're talking about, they're young and they're developing their cognitive stuff. We are the planting seeds of the self-talk in these kids. So yes, 100%. No one knows what failing is until someone helps them identify what failing is or is not. Same thing with the approach in the box and what you're trying to accomplish. And that's why the internal wiring of like trying to help an athlete define for themselves a meaningful performance outside of stats and outcomes is so critical, so that they can lighten the load a little bit. Outcomes are great measurements for certain things, but really just to go back and try and be consistent towards some part of your training process, right?
Yeah.
But 100%, again, sorry to go off, but like I get fired up about that too, because these kids don't have an approach or have an objective in the box, and they're wondering why their brain's going all over the place. I'm like, you're walking into a gym without a workout plan, my man. You got to pick an objective so you can follow something. the funny thing is when most kids follow anything, I could say swing at the first pitch, just do it. Just make up your mind and do something. At least you're proving you're trusting yourself because you said you were going to do something and follow something and you committed to it and you walked into the box and did it. So regardless of you getting out or not, I think most athletes feel more fulfilled when they have an approach and they trust it. Even if they get out, they're like, I went in there with my plan. It didn't work, but I'm glad that I've had my own back and I went in there to do something that I said I was going to do versus walking into the box and a kid gets lucky and hits a dinker and it drops for a blue base hit. And he's just like, I'm glad I survived. I'm glad I got the first. You know what I mean? So what would you say is worse, coach? Would you want players that get out, but they're like going up there loose, committed to what they're doing and they hit the ball at someone and they're like, but I'm trusting myself, I'm following? Or would you rather have a bunch of guys that are getting lucky, like nervous and hesitating and they're not even letting it go, but they get some hits every once in a while? Which type of team would you rather have?
Well, I can put it to you this way, okay? I've always said this, so people have heard me talk about this before. If you get up there and you hit a hard line drive right at the shortstop and he catches it, I'm going to pat you on the back. I'm happy, I'm really happy for you because that's what we're trying to do. If you get up there and you do everything wrong, okay, and you just catch the ball off of the end of the barrel and it happens to make it over the second baseman's head and you get a base hit, I'm not as happy. All right? You got a base hit. We'll take it, but I'm not happy because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Everything you did was wrong. You got lucky. Okay. Meanwhile, the other guy did everything that was right, barreled the ball up, stayed behind the baseball, stayed on top of it, bang, ripped it right at the shortstop, and he caught it. Okay. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. And I don't want anybody out there to think that, we don't take those hits. No one's perfect. So we're going to be out in front. We get fooled all the time. It's not like those things don't happen, but the consistency of 100% of a player that trusts themselves, goes up there, does everything correct. They followed a plan. It's frustrating to get out when those things happen. You hit it right at somebody. We had a kid even in my school that I played with. He batted above 300, maybe like 330-ish, but he should have batted like 530. He always would line out at people all like multiple bats in a row, and he would come over and throw his bat because like, I don't get what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything wrong when it's not working. So it's frustrating, but 100%, like it for most of the time, being consistent in the one option is what you would want to try and help your team become versus a player that is just getting in there, winging it, not following anything, doesn't trust themselves. They throw the barrel at the ball and it dinks over or whatever. So yeah, it's a challenging fact. It's a challenging phase to get kids to 100%. I think never thinking or never telling an athlete you're going to 100% believe in yourself all the time, which is where others in the environment is helpful for sure to tell a kid when they don't believe, I know it's been 3 games, man, but look, your skill didn't disappear overnight. Let's go back to keeping this thing simple again. Swing the barrel, man. Good things happen when you swing. Don't stop swinging the bat. When you stop swinging, dude, we can't do anything.
I can be, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't use sarcasm. I try not to use sarcasm a lot when I'm working with my players. But like if a kid comes to me and says something like that, oh, coach, I haven't gotten a hit in 3 games, this, that, and the other thing. I'll look at him and I'll say, stop crying like a 4-year-old. Just go up there, see the ball, and hit it. And you want to know something? A lot of times it'll work because I got them, thinking differently, that stop beating yourself up. You're acting like a 4-year-old. Just go up there and hit it hard. See it and hit it. Done. I don't want you thinking about anything else. And a lot of times it'll work. I mean, I'm not going to say it works every time. Of course not. But
sure. And sometimes like when they're doing that, they might be communicating something beneath the surface. Like he might be actually concerned about what you think about his performance. He might be saying out loud to you, I haven't gotten a hit in 3 games, but what he's really trying to say to you without saying it is, do you think I'm good? Or are you going to do is there any problem here between how are you seeing me? So when you say something like that to him, it was probably reassuring that like, I don't give a crap about what you're telling me. So you shouldn't care about it either, or at least that getting it, right? Like, so you never know what an athlete's trying to communicate. And I try to read below what their words are sometimes, and just not overthink what they might and overanalyze, because that can take you down a road too. But I always keep in my mind, like, players want to impress their coaches, they want to impress their teammates, they want to impress their parents. I keep those kinds of foundational things. Like, it's impossible to not care about what people think, but it's just caring about the right things outside of the efforts. So when you said that to him, he probably was just like, okay, like, coach gave me some room to not care about it as much, so let me go back in there and.
Well, I have another one that I use. This one people might not like, but I'll say this to players. And again, my reasoning behind saying this to the player is because I want to lighten the moment. I want him to relax. I don't want him to be tight. So he'll come to me and, whatever. Hey, coach, I haven't gotten a hit in 3 games. I don't know, this and that. I'll look at him and say, you know why you haven't gotten a hit in 3 games? And he'll say, no, coach, I don't know. I say, oh, I know, because you suck, like that. And then, the kid starts laughing, and then I'll tell him, get in the batter's box, forget about everything else, see it and hit it. And again, a lot of times it works. He knows I don't mean that when I say it,
Right.
but the reason why I'm saying it is to lighten the moment, forget about it. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, I agree with you with the knowing your player is the big thing there.
Yes.
If you've got a player that you've developed that kind of relationship with, and I knew just like a catcher, like, I knew my pitchers, I knew certain pitchers like to work quickly. I knew what to say to a pitcher. I knew I could go out and use humor with one pitcher, and it worked. And then if I used humor with another one, he would tell me to, like, screw off and get the hell out of here. Right. So knowing your team and knowing your players individually helps you understand the tactic to use.
Absolutely.
When you're communicating with them. I'm sure there's players you wouldn't say that to.
Yes.
Because for me, I remember a moment where I was senior year, my fielding percentage, I'm very, very proud of. I barely made throwing errors, or I'm missing pass balls or whatever. And I remember having a game where I missed one pass ball and a runner advanced, and my coach said something out loud where I knew other people could hear it while I was on the field, and it tore me apart inside. So I would have to, I'll be like, coach, if you want to say something, man, could we just do it when I come in the dugout? Like, I'd appreciate it, because it felt like I wasn't supported by my superior officer, in the middle of battle. And I feel like I've been doing a hell of a job back here. So, but that one comment would tear me up. And obviously you don't want to be that fragile. You want to have an athlete out there that's not going to tear up like that. But if he would have known his words affected me like that, he might have held on to it, or whatever. So it's definitely knowing your team and stuff. But the humor thing is very great for a lot of athletes, and the sarcasm thing can be great as well, as long as, like you said, as long as they know, coaches, this is our relationship. I've used that with some. I don't take it too far, but there's definitely been some times when I used to be doing a lot of the baseball coaching stuff a long time ago, where an athlete might come off and say something similar, and I'll be like, oh, I guess we should just pack it up and go then, shouldn't we? We should just, like, I'll make sure my tone is there. And, like, I guess we should just pack it up. I'll drive us. Let's go get a McDonald's cheeseburger right now. Yeah, let's leave everybody here. You don't have to go back on the mound. I don't have to keep coaching. Let's go pack it up and let's just see what everyone does. And then might start laughing a little bit. I'm like, dude, get back on the mound and throw again. I don't care. You shouldn't care as much. You know what I mean? So I'm all with you for that, man. At the right time, right place, knowing your team and stuff.
Well, again, it's something that we talk about all the time as being transformational, not transactional, where you have to coach the player. The person. You have to coach the person before you do the player. So you have to know what type of person A is. And to your point, there's kids that I would never say that to. There's no way, because I would probably crush them. They wouldn't, no matter what, no matter whether I laughed when I said it, it would still, did he really mean that? Did coach really mean when he said I sucked? You know what I mean? Where there are other players that say, come on, coach, cut it out. You know what I mean? So it's really, really important. So we're,
sorry.
No. We're just coming up on an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to reference how important our words to people are as coaches, like really, really mending. I saw Tua, the quarterback for the Dolphins. I posted the other day. He was talking about how a coach he had, I don't know if he was the coach at the head coach at the time, but the coach was being very, like, demeaning towards, like, the language he was using towards Tua and saying, like, you suck, and all these things. And Tua said, like, you're in an environment where these people are supposed to have your back. Sooner or later, you start saying that kind of stuff to yourself. So I was just going to bounce off and say, like, it doesn't matter the age. Like, you hear stuff enough, if you're not careful as a coach to pay attention to the language and stuff, it definitely will, kids will start convicting themselves, especially the young ones. But if a quarterback at the NFL level can struggle with it, like some 12, 14-year-old at the high school level, we definitely need to realize the power of our influence and our words and actions for sure.
Absolutely. One other thing that I want to get into, like I said, we're coming up on an hour, and I just want to touch on this before we go. Let's talk about a growth mindset, because I believe as a coach, all coaches need to have a growth mindset. How do we convey that to players that they need to have one?
Yeah, that's a great one. It's a tough one. It's a great one. It's definitely growth and fixed mindset is definitely one of the foundational conversations, to figure out, does a kid think he is the way he is? Is he stuck there? Can there be improvement? Can that happen? So are you asking, how do you help a kid understand growth mindset, like in general? Is to look, one of the things I'll do is I'll ask them about something that has nothing to do with sports. I'll say, have you improved at anything before? And have those kinds of conversations. What's something that you've seen yourself get better at? And then they might pick video games or something else, or maybe school. I studied and I got smarter or something like that. And then I'll try to start with a little bit of education and say, like, it's the same thing in other avenues of life. With time and effort and energy dedicated over time, things will get better. And the brain is wired just like the muscles in the body. So an easy one that I use is to explain it is be like, if you do bicep curls, eat good food and stuff like that over time, get bigger biceps. And what baseball player doesn't want to have tight sleeves out there, right? So I'll start with that, and then I'll explain to them the brain functions very similarly, to where if you do things in your head, and if you believe that you can excel and improve at something, the rate will be different for different athletes and different intensities at different things. You've got skill and talent, skill, the actual ability, and talent, the ability to get skilled sooner rather than later at something. So if someone's really talented at infield work, they're getting better quicker at certain things than maybe another kid at infield work for whatever reason. So you've got talent and skill. But what I will do is if they're struggling with it, I will say, let's pick something simple here for you to work on and learn this process. And to teach it to themselves, like, it could be a simple drill. It could be like, okay, put a duct tape an X to a wall and go 20 feet back and throw 15 times and see how many times you hit it. Maybe they get 2 and be like, okay, over the next, month, we're going to do these drills to improve accuracy. If you commit to this and believe that it's going to get better, then you'll see yourself improve something. And then that helps them understand, like, okay, with time, with effort, things improve, right? So the growth mindset to adopt, yes, I might not get to where I want to be quickly or slower than this other, like, I don't know, but with effort and more concentrated quality effort, especially, right? Quality and quantity, to try and help them understand this idea that's infinite of, like, always improving, always learning, which sometimes, coach, can be overwhelming to be like, there's so much to do. I got all of this, and you've got a kid looking at 20 miles down the road of all the work. I struggle with that as well. I could be like, oh man, look at all this stuff that has to go. It's almost like the explanation of, like, going on a trip. I got to pack my bag. I got to wait in line. I got to go through security. I got the 14-hour flight. And then you're like, then I get to the beach. Oh wait, don't forget about the annoying, like, GPS system that I always screw up. It's always, some kids think about all the work that has to do, and it's very, throwing themselves back. So long story short, I work with kids to understand growth mindset as just a means to, like, start with the skills aspect of it and then try to help them mold that into other areas of their performance arena. I think the skills area is the easiest thing to, because they can feel it more and they can see it more. So I try to get them to pick something simple that they can progress in quickly, measure that progression. And then once they see themselves improve it, it's a lot easier to have them believe, okay, now this can do in other areas, in other domains, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's something that's very, very important. I want you to put in work to get 1% better every day. Okay. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's how you're going to create this growth mindset. And if you look at, every day, there's 1,440 minutes in every single day. So you give me 1% of that, that's roughly 15 minutes. That's what you got to do. Give me 15 minutes a day, whatever it is. Like you said, put an X on the wall, do this, do that, and give me 15 minutes of that a day, and then you're going to get better. So, to me, that's how we reinforce that with the players. You know what, everybody out there, yourformulanow.com. That's Lane's website. I think you should check it out. If you don't, then you're just missing out. I don't know what to tell you.
Lane, you didn't.
Right, Lane, thank you so much for coming on. First of all, thank you for reaching out. This is great. I mean, I really appreciate it because another friend, another relationship, and this was a great show.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Coach. I just want to say I thank you for allowing me to come on here and spit some of what I have been doing in the space and what I've been working on with athletes and sharing some of my process. But also thank you for you putting time into creating this platform to get information out to people out there, because it is a crazy world of sports in general. Baseball, I'm obviously a little bit more biased from playing the sport, and I know how crazy the sport is to be successful. It's very challenging, but I appreciate you doing what you do and bringing the authentic care to the community, because just about a short time that we've been having this networking relationship growing, and I'm looking forward to moving along and getting to know you more. But it's so needed out there to get the right info in front of parents, coaches, and athletes. I'll leave it at this. Everybody is trying to do the same thing, I think, in so many different ways that it gets frustrating. And you've got parents that want the best for their kids. You've got kids that want to do well and get better. You got coaches that want to help the kids get better and help the parent. Everybody wants to go in the same direction, but we're all struggling sometimes to get the right info that's going to be helpful to do that. So I call that the frustration zone. So thank you for doing this and having a podcast where parents, coaches, and athletes can all come and listen to different experts and different people doing good work in the field. And hopefully everyone gets 1% better from listening to something that I said and all these other people, and can get a little nugget. And if you just apply even one small thing that you hear from your podcast, it is a significant improvement. So thank you.
Well, I thank you very much for those kind words. And, it's like anything, well, I shouldn't say anything else, but it's like a lot of things that happen. This whole thing kind of happened by accident. It wasn't really something that I said, I'm going to go out and do this. And thanks to people like you and all of the other guests that we've had on this show that have made it successful because of what you just said. People want to listen to a Lane Farmer. They want to hear what these guys who know what they're talking about have to say. And another thing that you said I think is very important is finding that right information. Okay. There is a ton of information out there, but what is right? And that's very hard for people to distinguish.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Even down to like what camps and clinics to take and where to spend your money and what team to play for. That it is a flooded world of information. It's tough to know which one to pay attention to and it's not even sometimes if it's the right or wrong thing, just the timing of when you should listen to certain pieces of information too. So everyone's on a different path and at a certain point, and maybe this thing is for this kid at this point, but it's not for you. So it is a challenging process to have great information or not so great information. What do I listen to and when to apply it? It is a struggle city sometimes, but that's why you're here, to try and help people apply it at the right time.
Exactly. So tell people where they can reach you on social media.
Yeah. So I just got the website, Your Formula Now. Then my Instagram is also Your Formula Now. I don't have too many other places that I'm operating off of yet. I'm going to start getting some YouTube stuff going a little bit more, but those are the main places. His website, and then if anybody needs to reach out, the information's on there to email and get in touch and have a conversation. So all good.
That's excellent. Lane, thanks again for coming on, and I'm pretty sure we'll talk again sometime.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Coach.
Thanks. And that wraps up another episode of Clearing the Bases. I really hope you enjoyed listening to Lane Farmer talk about mindset, character, and mental skills. Don't forget to check out his website, yourformulanow.com. A lot of good information, a lot of ways to get in touch with Lane. I highly suggest you check it out. Baseball is all about practice, patience, and passion. Whether you're a player on the field, coach in the dugout, even a parent in the stands, keep it fun and let's grow the game. Let's work hard together to make the youth baseball experience a really great experience. So, if you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Visit the website at thectbshow.net. Leave us a review and even sign up to be a guest. Your feedback helps us bring you the best content and reach more people in the baseball community just like you. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, reach out to us on social media, X, Facebook, Instagram, and now, finally, we're on YouTube too. You can also drop us an email at clearingthebases@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Once again, thanks for tuning in to Clearing the Bases. We can't wait to see you back here for our next episode. Until then, keep practicing, stay positive, and remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.